Hey everybody, Liz here, bringing you my first art video on my YouTube channel and Patreon. Today we're going to venture into the meditative aspects of art. This is a project that only requires paper and something to draw with. So a pencil, pen, marker, whatever you have laying around is going to work perfectly. I'm going to be adding some color later, and I'll be using watercolor pencils to do this. As mediums go, they're very versatile and can give you a lot of fun results. You can use anything you'd like to add some color or leave this exercise black and white, and you'll see what I mean as we go. So as I said, you only need paper and pencil. But for me personally, I tend to shift the paper a lot with my hand because, well, I rest my hands very heavily. So I'm actually going to tape down each side. I'm just using a little bit of masking tape here. So this drawing is going to have a base structure of one continuous line. We're going to connect the way our pencil moves so that it correlates to our breathing. I'm going to start on the left-hand side of the page, and as I breathe in, I'm going to bring the line up and around, keeping the inhale of my breath as the top of my circle and my exhale as the bottom. I'm going to work my way across the page. So this is a great journaling project if you want to do it daily. It's good just every once in a while when you're stressed. Taking the time to really just do something for yourself is very important. I'm going to stop here, but you can continue on for as long as you'd like, taking those nice, deep, calming breaths. There's no correct amount of breathing. Just stop when you feel complete. I'm going to add some lines to some of the sections. I'm keeping things simple, but feel free to experiment here. Use dots, wavy lines, or maybe even smaller circles. You can draw tiny flowers, smiley faces, however you want to personalize it. The idea here is that you're going to fill in as many sections as looks good to you. If you want to fill in the whole thing, that's great. If you want to do just one small section here and there, that's good too. It's a great time to bring your awareness back to your breath as you're drawing these small details, if you want to get that extra meditative nature of the practice. If you can, time some of the pattern you're making in your spaces with the natural rhythm of your respiration. Doing this exercise regularly can really be a peaceful break and return to mindfulness during your day. Plus, you get a cool piece of art at the end. Now it's time to detail it so it's more unique. So here I am going to grab a ruler. And the reason for this is because it's going to be a little easier to show you the cross-hatching technique that I'm going to do. If you want to grab a ruler, you can, if you happen to have one on hand, or you can grab something with a straight edge, the edge of a book, or if you have a notepad, or if your to-do list is particularly sturdy, you can absolutely use that to do the lines. So where I have sections of lines already, if I choose a larger space that encompasses both, I can actually bring a line across both areas. And this intersection of lines going one way and the other is actually called cross-hatching. It gives the more compressed areas with more lines going in both directions almost a darker look. So from further away, it's actually going to appear that those sections are colored more darkly, even though we really haven't done much more than put the same amount of pressure on that pencil. So again, here I'm just going to pick two sections. I'm going to bring the ruler across. That way it looks a little more even so that I have those two areas that share the same line, but not the same space. So I'm just going to add a couple more areas of lines in the cross-hatching technique. And I'm going to speed through a little bit so we can get to the next process. As I said, this project can be complete here. You can be done if you want. It already has that contemporary line art feel. You can even go back over the lines if you want with a marker or something to really make those lines bold. I'm going to add a little color. For this exercise, I like grouping my colors to match how I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling mopey or sad, I'd stay in the blue spectrum. Or if I was angry or anxious, I might venture into the reds and yellows. I'm feeling pretty mellow right now, so my color selection is going to be mostly purples, blues, and greens. Like I said before, you can use anything to add some color, but I'm going to be using watercolor pencils. So here are my watercolor pencils. I love this medium for how it works, and also the very limited mess it makes. When I can't decide on what art supplies I want to take on trips, I usually settle on a pack of these. The only weird thing I'd say about watercolor pencils is that sometimes the manufacturer will dip the ends of the pencils in the same color. As you can see, one of my sets has a red end. So every pencil has that red end. As far as packaging goes, it's a poor decision because more than once I've picked up the wrong color, thinking it was actually red. So if you're working with another medium to add color, go ahead and start to fill in some of your spaces. If you do have watercolor pencils, I'm going to briefly go over what I'm doing and how I'm getting the effect you're seeing. So watercolor pencils are essentially a colored pencil that you can then add water to get a watercolor paint effect. So how I'm going to do that today is I'm actually going to color in one section in the corner a little darker so that I can get that richness of color in the one section. And then I'm going to bring a brush that's damp across. So I don't even need to fill in the whole space here because the watercolor effect is going to complete that for me. The harder I press with a watercolor pencil, the richer the purple I'm going to get. So I'm going to go back over this section. Now it's time for my slightly damp brush. So I'm just going to drag it from the darker section to the light. And you can already see you get that nice rich color at the top and that sort of almost watercolor blend at the bottom. So I'm taking nice strokes. And you can see you get that kind of blended pop of color. So I'm going to repeat this process a couple times. The thing to note about watercolor pencils is that they do act the same as watercolor paints. And by that I mean if you put two sections close together, the color will start to bleed if they're both wet. So that's why I'm purposely going to move my sections further apart so that they're not touching, or if they are touching, that the one section appears to be dry. Now, how do you know if your watercolor section is dry? So the easiest way to tell that is actually to tilt the paper, and if you see any shine against a light, you're going to know that it's still wet. But if it looks dry and matte, it'll be perfect, and you can actually go over it again in the same section, or you can paint the section next to it and you won't get any bleed. So in this section, I did blue at the top with some green at the bottom, and I'm just going to blend up. So I'm going to speed up here. You can probably get the idea of what I'm doing. So I'm going to continue on with my watercolor pencils. Now, whatever medium you've chosen, fill in as much as you feel like today. So it doesn't have to be the whole image, although it could be. You're just going to add that pop of color. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see some of the detail. And it looks pretty cool. Again, you can leave it at this point where it's just got that color and those lines. If you stand back, it's going to look really great from a distance. What I'm going to do, because part of making really dynamic art also involves line quality, and some of that is how dark the line is, how dark the colors are, how bold they are. Since this does look like a contemporary piece, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make some of those lines a little darker. That's just going to be so that they stand out a little bit from a distance. And you don't have to do every line. You can if you want. But if you just want to add that little hint of, hey, here's something interesting to look at, you can just do a couple lines. So I'm going to speed this process up a little bit. And I'm also going to add some solid colored areas. So that dark is really going to make those colors in contrast pop. But it's also going to bring our eyes back to those lines. And here we have it, all set and done, your own gallery-worthy art piece. All right, guys, thank you for viewing my video. If you liked this, please subscribe or follow. I'm new to Patreon, but I plan on setting up all kinds of exclusive items and opportunities soon. So live long and art on.